podcast. Happy Monday. We have Priscilla McKinney, who is the CEO, a serial entrepreneur, author, keynote speaker, and founder of Little Bird Marketing. Known for her irreverent, no-nonsense approach to B2B growth and digital transformation, she has built Little Bird Marketing into an award-winning content marketing and lead generation agency. She is the author of Collaboration is the New Competition and the creator of proprietary frameworks like the SOAR System, designed to help business leaders create sustainable, repeatable lead generation. A veteran podcaster herself with over 450 episodes hosted across her shows, Ponderings from the Perch and Digital Transformation Success, McKinney is also a prominent figure across the market research and insights industry. Priscilla, thanks so much for coming on.
Absolutely. I just have to say, if you're listening as a fellow podcaster, please do Dylan a favor right now and go give him a review somewhere and share this podcast, because this is such a labor of love. And so go give him a little bit of love if you've enjoyed all of his other podcast episodes. So thanks for having me on.
I love it. Well, thanks for getting my plug on the front end of the show versus the end when I normally do it. But I can tell that you've got, you've got some armor that you've worn throughout the years being a show producer and host yourself. So appreciate that. I know I gave a little bit of context to your background, but we like to always start with the beginning. So where'd you grow up? What'd you study? And how'd you get into marketing and the agency world?
Well, I'm the fifth of five girls. We were in a singing, basically a Von Trapp Christian family. I do know how to put on a solid puppet show. So does that matter for your podcast at all?
Hey, you never know.
Matching dresses, the works. I'm the youngest. I really have to run in place, verbally in order to just be heard. So I definitely learned how to get my point across quickly and how to build influence. And so following that from growing up in Europe, overseas, and coming back to the US and going to school, I got my degree in cultural anthropology. It made the most amount of sense to me. I couldn't believe you could actually get a degree studying how humans interact, what we agree to tacitly, how we really, move through this world absolutely emotionally, but think we do it logically. And this is just, thinking about all the artifacts we leave behind on a day-to-day basis and how we operate. Well, that's like such an interesting way to come at marketing, because a lot is going on down below in the subconscious. And so I put myself through school doing some other more things that would make your parents proud, like, starting a credit card processing business and before moving into marketing. But so I've been running my marketing agency now with my background really in business and in finance, and then coming at it from anthropology. So this it's a beautiful blend, and I actually serve a lot of market research firms. So it's kind of come full circle in some ways, but at the end, it's really about why we act the way we do, why we interact the way we do, and how companies can effectively move you along your own buyer journey to, growing revenue for their company.
I love it. So on the market research side, so do you help market research clients find more clients, or do you support them with research and your own thought leadership, or a little bit of both? That's fascinating to me.
I don't do any research. I hire professionals to do the research. I support the market research firms, and I help them get clients. So my clients are people like Procter & Gamble and Apple and American Express, and so they work for the big name companies, and I help them get seen and heard by those companies.
That's very cool. I wonder, you probably have a point of view. Market research is transforming probably faster than many different components of the marketing stack, just because one of the places that AI has been most useful and people are the most comfortable with is in the research phase. Be curious how you have seen AI kind of propel this side of the industry forward at kind of lightning speed, with the ability just to hoover up endless reams of data and being able to deliver insights a lot faster maybe than we used to be able to.
Well, you can deliver insights a lot faster. The question is, are they any better? But I will say research is one of those industries where there was a lot of grunt work. So when you talk about crosstabs or, actually, doing, getting numbers out of surveys and programming surveys, of course, this is like lightning speed, helped us become more efficient. But you still have to have that human at the helm who understands when garbage is coming out. This, if you think back even, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it's like this big data. Well, big data didn't help companies like we thought it would, because you still need to be able to interpret that big data. And as a cultural anthropologist, I think we also need to put that culture on top. So it seems really simple to us. Like in the US, we say, oh yeah, but we can use AI to ask, what do you think about this? Or, what about sriracha chips? What do you think about that? But what about something we haven't heard of before? AI is just a predictive engine. So do you want to be, you want to be the next pumpkin spice latte? Well, you can ask about the last pumpkin spice latte, but what is that new space? What is the open space? What is the white space in any particular industry? And how are things interacting? So, for example, we start going through a little bit of an economic downturn and inflation is going up. Well, what does that look like for a buyer at a grocery store reaching for this chip or this chip? Well, now is value coming in? So these things all fluctuate. And so we can't just go to AI for the answer, because AI shows us the past, but that won't show us the potential future. And we have to get to the bottom of the real, subconscious where we work from as humans in order to understand what's happening with brands. And just as that is shifting so quickly, so is our culture and how we decide how to interact. And so you can look at that in a small little instance and be very maybe American about it and think, oh, all the answers are there. But what about when you want to move this particular new brand of coffee in Indonesia? Okay, well, do we have the data in AI for that? Maybe not. So AI can be very good, and it can be quick research, maybe desk research for a lot of things, and absolutely has sped up a lot of really high quality research by taking some of the grunt work out, but it certainly hasn't replaced research.
Have you experimented at all with this idea of synthetic panels, where you can kind of create this massive cohort of people and it behaves, or it's supposed to behave as a normal focus group, essentially? So it's a big group of people. AI has modeled how this group of consumers should and will act, and then you can ask it questions the same way you would a room of 20 people sitting behind a glass window. Be curious if you played with that at all and what you think.
Oh my gosh, this is like every other, presentation at the conferences I attend. So yes, I have an opinion. And I would say, as always, one synthetic data is not the same as the other. And also it's not for use in every situation. And even the people who use synthetic data would tell you, okay, but there are some things we can't use this for. And so that you have to really understand what it is, and then not act like we're just going to hang our hat on this is the next form of research. No, this is one of many tools. Now, I will say, just for people who are not in research, it sounds like it's all brand new, but I'm telling you, this has been around forever. It's statistical weighting of answers and surveys. Now we just have a fancy name for it, which actually I think synthetic data really needs a marketing firm, because that's a horrible name. It sounds so fake, right? It needed a better PR rep. But you have very, let me back up and say, the data that you get is only good as the data you put in. So consider, you could go to company A and get synthetic data, or company B. Well, what is the model built on? Is it built on 8 people, or is it built on 80,000 people? Okay, well, that's a big difference. So synthetic data, just across the board, is number one, nothing new. And number two, like, they're apples and oranges if you're talking about from one company to the next. So you need to understand what it's built on. What in general it is good for is when you do want to fill in some gaps, maybe some audiences you can't quite reach, but you need them to be in adequate representation to other groups in your survey. So let's just bring it down to 10, even though the number's not 10. So it can be 10,000, whatever. But out of 10 people, let's say you needed 4 of them to be women, but you only got so many, people to, the quota only hit so far. Well, you can take certain groups like that and extrapolate some information and use synthetic data well in order to get a more rounded a set of answers. So there's some really good use cases, but it certainly is not like the savior of market research in any way.
That's great. I think it's we for those of us who are generalists in marketing and advertising, we hear about these sexy new tools and some of these shortcuts or buzzwords. So it's great to get kind of a veteran with your level of expertise in the category, some real, non-biased thinking around it. So I would love to hear a little bit about how you execute for your clients. Will you tell me a little bit about the SOAR system? What is it? How does it work? And how do your clients take advantage of it?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say everybody needs to have a system. You don't go to the grocery store without a system. Otherwise, you come home with nothing but junk food. So you need a system. and even some people say, oh, no, we don't have a system. We wing it. Yeah, you do. You do have a system. You might not have it written down. And so you need to have a system. And in my opinion, you need to write it down. If you expect certain results and you want to be able to replicate success, you need to know how you got there. So having a system is also one form of just documenting your SOPs and then being able to say what worked, what didn't. So I created a system called SOAR, and anybody can crib it from me. They don't need to work with Little Bird Marketing. This is a gift I will give you right now. If you are starting any kind of a project, and it doesn't even have to be marketing, it still needs to be SOAR, strategic first, organized next, accountable thirdly, and then repeatable. And that might seem so obvious when I say it there, and people are like, yeah, of course I do that all the time. But you would be surprised how many people ask me for the R first. Okay, well, what KPIs, Priscilla? What measurements? We're going to hit this. And, I want to have these goals. And okay, we can set goals. But when it comes to true repeatability, that comes last because it's about how things performed. And it's about us measuring that over time and being able to say, when I measure this, it is an actual representation of what happened back at S, O, and A. And so we have to start back at S. And a lot of people don't want to, especially entrepreneurs. They want to go, but you have to figure out who is your target audience and what exactly are you trying to get them to do. And you might be surprised also to find out that a lot of people just say, oh, well, Priscilla, just get us more meetings. We'll book the account. No, that's not what you want me to do. You don't want more accounts. Do you want more problematic accounts? Ones that are easy to book but hard to keep? No, you don't. So it's about coming back to that strategy. And again, some freebies on littlebirdmarketing.com/resources. Start by creating a persona. Really understand your ideal customer. Understand what is giving them fits, what is keeping them up on Sunday nights, what motivates them and gets them going on Monday morning. Who are they trying to impress? You really need to understand the challenges that they are facing, whether they are brand new or they are just persistent. And so start there. So that's S with strategy. And just very quickly, organization for me, that's project management. That's checklist, standard operating procedure. If you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm the only person who can do this in your company, that's the signal you've got a problem. You should not be the only.
You got to write it down.
I'll give a shout out to, I'm not being paid to do this, but to a company called Tango. And if you want to create a standard operating procedure and you're not a sit down and write standard operating procedures yourself kind of person, you just turn Tango on, you do the task, you turn it off, and it writes the standard operating procedure for you. So
wow, that's pretty cool.
Little tidbit. That's organization. Accountability is just saying 3 days later, 3 weeks later, 3 months later, someone else says, oh, I think we should do this. We think we should start this new ad campaign. We should go to this new conference. And you go, whoa, time out. Is it fitting into our strategy? can we organize it? And organizing it means not just making it pretty, but making sure there's bandwidth. Who is going to do it? Right? That's organization. And then we say, okay, if it's accountable to S and O, then yes, A, we can do it. And if you put those in place, then you eventually get the R, which is the repeatability. You look at reports, you look at the data, and you decide what things worked and what didn't. You double down, triple down on what worked, and then you let go of what did not work. This is a system that would help you with any kind of project.
I love it. Thanks so much for that framework. That was really simple to understand, and I think it's just a great litmus test to keep entrepreneurs and marketers from getting distracted by shiny objects. If you've got a framework like SOAR, you can pressure test any idea against a really easy philosophy, and I think that will keep you on track. So thank you. That was really valuable. All right, I want to hop into your podcasting background a little bit. So over 450 episodes. We've just crossed that threshold ourselves. 2 different shows. So tell us about your podcasts. Are they still happening? Are you still programming for these shows? And tell us a little bit about why you've started and how what has that show done or those shows done for your business?
Yeah, wow. Yeah, love it. Well, my first one that I started many, many years ago, over a decade ago, is Ponderings from the Perch. And we're definitely way past 450 episodes there. And we release that show every Friday. And it basically straddles the line that I straddle, which is marketing and market research. And so one week I will either have a solo show or talk with somebody in my team, just out loud thinking about what are best practices, what's changing, what's becoming more challenging. Last show I just recorded was with Andy Crestadino. We were talking about AEO, GEO, whatever we want to call it these days, SEO, and how this is changing underneath us. And we were just 2 professionals talking shop, for a few minutes and taking a break and really trying to help break these dumb acronyms down and help people get just their feet planted so they know what their next action is. So that's what the show is trying to do. Just let people leave behind egos and talk about what's going on in marketing. And then the next week, I have someone from market research come on and I interview them and let them be the expert and be in the hot seat. And we talk about everything from shopper insights that are incredibly complicated, like actual video metrics of how people are seeing and looking at things on the shelf, and it could be over to as simple as a survey or synthetic data. I have people on the show about that. So it's just something in the realm of market research and how we need to really be still focused on that voice of customer and on the human being who is really acting differently as our culture changes, as AI permeates it. So again, to your question at the beginning of, well, let's just use AI for research. Well, that's fine. But AI has been informed and was created by humans who did not have AI. Right? So we're going to get answers about that world. But now the world is constantly changing. And so as we are morphing, that needs to be constantly nuanced. And you really need a social scientist to understand that.
I love it. Has it become a substantial owned media channel? Because you started it you started it so early. I imagine you've had, you were early to the trend. I imagine you've had do you get a lot of inbound people who find the content and then go deeper into your funnel to learn more about what you do?
Yeah, I really do. But I have to say it's more about my influence. It's really provided for me influence in my industry. I could call and ask anybody for almost anything. And that is something that a lot of people don't tell you when you start a podcast. I can ask, I just had somebody on from Walgreens and he's like, oh, sure, I'd love to do it for you, Priscilla. Okay. I had people on from Meta. I actually went out and spoke at Meta. It's something that builds your influence, and it's not something that I think people always go into it for. Did I want to, build my funnel? Sure, but it happened differently than I thought. I thought it would be people passively coming in, in the funnel and then finding us and then, finding other things on our website. But I find that's not the case. I have people on my podcast and then they introduce me to someone else and it becomes so personal, or they work with me. They're like, wait a minute, I like the way you think, Priscilla. Let's talk about our businesses. And it grows from there. So yes, it is an owned channel for sure that has been huge for my success in a way that I did not see coming. And now, my gosh, it's just so much fun. But then I will say I am lucky enough to have enough downloads that now people pay to actually put ads on my program. And so the whole thing's monetized, and that's great. I try and stay very true to who my audience is and only choose those, very carefully. But yeah, I can have people on and let people know news that's going on in our industry. And I started it really just because I wanted to channel. I wanted to talk about, I wanted to work out some of the things I needed to know. And it really gave me access to anyone. And that was amazing. And then just sidebar for my other one, Digital Transformation Success. I actually started that podcast specifically to sell it because a lot of people,
wow,
they want to start a podcast. So they do, but they don't go to that war really having counted the cost. And so it fizzles out, and you and I, this far along, it's a labor of love. There's also have to be very strong systems under there. So someone comes in, you can't have any of this process be manual. Where's your headshot? Where's your bio? Where's this? When are you scheduling it? Like if you start going back and forth and scheduling with people, you won't have a life. So there's so many things underneath it. And so I created this one thinking, I'll just build it. I'll get a really solid audience and I'll sell it. So I'm about ready to sell it, but it's called Digital Transformation Success. And it's not in market research and it's not in marketing. It's about business across the board. I talked to really interesting digital transformation people who are maybe transforming what they do digitally in legal, maybe doing it in HR, maybe doing it with technology, maybe with AI. I have some market research people on there if it's specific to how are we going to manage all of these humans so that we can work more digitally, but still really drive revenue. So it's definitely more a business podcast. And I started that, like I said, to sell it. So we'll see where that goes.
I love that. And would you still have to go with the show for a period of time? You don't think it requires your intellect and personality and delivery and kind of like, that's the thing that I always wonder. I've never had an offer for my show, but I always wonder, even if you're able to brand it something, that isn't specific to you, such as digital transformation success, that's great, domain authority, and it's great branding, but you're still kind of an engine behind it. But do you think you could pop you out and pop another host in once the new owners are able to do that, and then it can be something that lives on without you?
I do think that I really strongly believe that, and I think somebody's brand will want to be next to that. Now, do you have to find a great interviewer? Yeah, you do. You can't go from, just something that's apples to oranges. It needs to be someone maybe kind of similar to it. But I think if their business is in alignment with the interviews that are going to happen on that, I think it's a pretty easy transformation. I think one of the beautiful things about us selling it is that we're a marketing company. And so we would include all of the transformation. How do you announce it? How do you switch it out? How do you have maybe a couple episodes together, about what does this look like and what's the purpose of this? But the reality is that, people are very hungry for tips and real understanding around digital transformation, because people think in the beginning it's about buying technology. Let's just buy technology and then we'll be a better company. And then they realize, oh my gosh, we have to have the humans at this company use this technology. And that's when it all starts to go crazy.
I love it. Well, no, that's really interesting, because I've heard some people build communities, kind of like Slack communities and email lists and stuff like that. But never heard of someone, kind of starting out with the intention of like, hey, this is a hot topic. This is an area where I could build some expertise around. I can get things going and build it, and then I'm going to sell it. So that's really cool. That's giving me a lot to think about. All right. Your book is titled Collaboration is the New Competition. How can B2B founders shift from viewing industry peers as threats and view them as potential growth partners?
Well, some people I kind of can't help, because you either approach this world from a lens of abundance or a lens of scarcity. And if you just always think that, you winning means someone else losing, then this is not the book for you. So just skip this podcast. But I do think that people typically believe in a win-win situation. What they don't understand is that you can have a win-win-win-win-win-win situation. They don't know how to build larger consensus and how to really wield better models in order to get more quickly to a collaboration. And most importantly, they don't know how to judge when a situation calls for collaboration and when you should go it alone. And my book is not about collaboration all the time at all costs. It is about, there are some times where collaboration will take you so much further, so much bigger, so much quicker, and with so much more joy if you would do it. But you have to have the right people. And so I give inside my book a framework, and it's really very simple. You have to basically find people who fit the rubric. And if they fit that rubric, go for it. It's going to be amazing. But if they don't, run. It is going to backfire. And I give a lot of good examples in the book about how it backfires so people can understand, okay, see, I called that collaboration and it was a mess. No, and I'd like to point out that wasn't collaboration. And let me show you why. Because it was missing these key ingredients. It's just people called it collaboration, but it's not. And so one of those things is like, for example, you get picked to be in a group. Okay, you're a work group, the four of you, you're going to do this project, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's not collaboration. Now you're sitting next to each other. That's geography.
It's delegation.
Right. And so we have to kind of backtrack. And just because other people use that word incorrectly, we can't judge everything that happens next, based on that. So don't give up on collaboration just because something has gone horribly wrong. And then my last part of the book is, hey, when you try it, something is going to go horribly wrong. And here are 7 anchors that'll help get you back on track.
Very cool. All right. We talked a little bit about systems, but you often say that entrepreneurs need to be scrappy as people, but build sophisticated systems. What does a sophisticated system look like in practice for a growing business?
Well, the one I love the most near and dear to my heart is our revenue sprint. And that's because I don't do marketing for marketing's sake. I do marketing for revenue growth. And so revenue sprint is one of those that I think is really important. And I like what you said, is like, I must have said it somewhere. You got to be scrappy in some ways, but you've got to build really eloquent, systems. And I think that a lot of times people think, oh, big sophisticated systems means I have to spend a lot of money. And it doesn't. But I do warn people, the less money you spend, the more time you're going to need to spend. So as long as you understand that, you're going to need to make an investment one way or the other, that's fine. I can find ways to make it lower budget, but it's going to be high intensity time. And for me, I work with companies where it's not worth it to have high intensity time, because the intensity time they need to be spending talking to the leads and talking and finishing the sales and giving contracts out. So I can't really give up their people time. So anyway, revenue sprint is one of those. And I think it's about, first of all, starting and understanding your client really well, but you can do that in a lot of scrappy ways. How do you just make a phone call, or how do you listen to 6 different industry podcasts to find out what people are talking about? Go on LinkedIn and really follow really good thought leaders who have original ideas. Find out, that's scrappy, right? But when it comes to putting together a revenue sprint, we want to make sure that, for example, if the revenue sprint is going to be a series of 3 webinars, okay, we need to stay the course. We need to spend the next 6 months where we work intently on the strategy. We make sure we do something for 3 weeks before a webinar, have the webinar, do 3 weeks down of sales stuff. Then we're going to have our next idea, 3 weeks up of marketing. The webinar, 3 weeks down of sales. People always drop out. Oh yeah, I'm done. No, you're not done. And then we're going to do it a third time. And we're going to do 3 weeks up and the webinar, and we're going to do 3 weeks down. And that's going to be a revenue sprint, not one webinar. Oh yeah, we've done a webinar in the past.
Too many people think like, oh yeah, I'm going to do one influencer post and then I'm going to get, sales, and nobody commits to a channel or a new idea or a strategy, understanding that it does take time and investment in order to get a new channel to work. You can't just think marketing isn't generally magic where you just switch a button and instantly things are working. You need some sustained pressure out there in the market. I want to ask you another thing. So, obviously you're very prolific as a podcaster yourself, but also as guesting. What's more important, having your own show or guesting, or are there equal components that make them both valuable?
Well, all guesting is not created equal. I don't know. Dylan, have you been on a podcast where you've been a guest and it turns out you're actually running the show?
Yeah, for sure. I think, there's definitely, better hosts and worse hosts out there. Yeah. That's
so just getting on podcasts is not the golden ticket that people think it is as well. A lot of those shows, they don't put anything behind it. They don't own a channel. They're not promoting it. Maybe it's not even your right audience. So there's so much work to do before that to understand if this is going to be helpful for anyone. And then also being on a podcast, you really have to be able to morph your expertise to the audience to make it relevant, because otherwise nobody's going to listen through the podcast. I mean, if it's boring, it's boring. People always ask me, how long should this podcast be? How long should this blog be? And I'm like, until you're boring. That's when you stop. It's not magic. There's not a number. Priscilla, tell me about 20-minute podcast, 45-minute podcast. I've listened to Steve Bartlett's 2.5 hours because I'm still enthralled.
Totally. I agree with you.
I listened for 8 minutes on another one and I'm like, bye.
Yeah. I saw one of those Navy SEALs guys did like a 12-hour show the other day. It was wild. I think it was just to see if they could do it. Yeah. But if you really want to go deep on somebody's story, I'll come back 3 or 4 nights in a row and give it some more time, as long as it continues to be compelling, which a lot of these long form storytellers are. Yeah, I love that.
But there's nothing like owning your own show. You can do what you want. You have something comes up, or even you want to do a favor for a colleague. That is also just undervalued. It's like, I have someone who's breaking something new and doing something cool, and you can have them on your podcast and give them an immediate audience. That's pretty awesome, and people,
it is. When
you do people favors, they do favors for you.
Yeah, it's a great piece of currency, whether it's working with clients or friends. Yeah, like I definitely have done some shows that weren't like right on the money, but because it was a favor for somebody, and I think people really appreciate that. And a lot of times it'll be kind of kicking off their podcasting journey, whether it's guesting or even launching their own show. So it's I keep running into people out in the wild that are like, I started my show because of you, and it's very flattering, right? All right. You created SOAR to fix broken lead generation models. Where do most B2B companies go wrong when trying to build a predictable funnel?
Well, I think the first thing is most salespeople and sales teams, they just give up too soon. They get bored of them. If they don't get immediate results, then they get off the message. And I'm like, wait, what are we doing? We're still selling this thing, And they're like, well, we'll sell this, or like they just get bored. It's as simple as that. And you have to be like, hey, over here, guys, come on. This is what we're doing. We're going to do this for 6 months. We're going to sell this one. I'm not saying if someone takes a meeting with you and they want a different product that you're not going to sell it. Of course, you're going to sell whatever it is someone wants. But we're going to focus on getting meetings for one particular product, right? And we're all going to do it together. And it provides additional accountability with the team. And it provides also some enjoyment, like some gamification. And that accountability, the other side of it, the beautiful side of accountability is also teamwork. So, this is what we were able to do together. And so people, what is that old adage that people give up too soon? or the idea that, you overestimate what you can get done in, 10 days and underestimate what you can get done in 10 years, whatever. So that whole adage is still the same.
Short-term, long-term thinking, basically.
Yes, exactly. And I find this funny because, Daniel Kahneman is an amazing social scientist that is very revered in market research. And he has the fast and slow thinking and this idea of system one and everything else. And I'm like, but guys, this is like your sweet spot. You understand this. You got to stay focused. You got to build the habit of staying course, because you might be tired of talking about it. I can't even tell you, for, 15 years, I've been talking about start with personas, start with strategy. Okay, but it doesn't matter how sick and tired I am of saying that. That is still fundamentally the message I need people to hear in order for their marketing to succeed. So it doesn't matter what I feel about it. What matters is that it's true, it's practical, it's overtly helpful. And if I stay on that tack, then people will see the point, and then they will give me, the right person will give me their time of day to have that further conversation. But I've got to stay on message, and sales teams just do not.
Yeah, I love that. Sales, I came up through the sales side, and originally in boiler room sales rooms where, like somebody would say a version of the conversation on the phone, and then the next guy next to you would just like take that thing that worked and tweak it just a little bit. Yep. And by the time it's gone around the entire room, and it's a completely different message to the customer. Again, like that's why they call the game of telephone, because, details can be manipulated, changed. And by the time you have the conversation 100 times through 100 different sales reps, it's been completely changed, and it doesn't have its essence, and it might not be true. So my manager would come screaming out of his office, and he'd have to like retool us all, get us back on script. So that was fun. All right. How does your background in cultural anthropology shape how you analyze buyer behavior and human motivation in B2B sales?
Well, kind of like I said at the beginning, is that we are emotional beings. And most of what we do and our decision-making process is in the subconscious, and we're not even quite aware of it. I like to explain this to people in a very practical way. My first new car as a new mom, I bought a cross country, XC70 or whatever, 60, whatever it was, a cross country. Well, I could tell you that I bought that because it's safety and it's Volvo and all this other kind of stuff. But I am going to tell you, as an advertiser, I know exactly why I bought it. I bought it because I saw an ad that was a surfer coming out of the water in the morning in northern coast California, probably somewhere around San Luis Obispo or something like that. It was a beautiful, it's just a beautiful scene, and he's carrying his board back up, and of course he can put it on his cross country. And I thought, oh yeah, I'm buying one of those. And so, just the people who say that advertising does not work on them, I'm like, you are a liar, and you don't even know you're lying. So there's just so much at work where that we draw from. We want a certain identity. Even, I have an Apple, I have an iPhone. Google phone is way better, but I have an identity in this world with an iPhone as an iPhone user, and I'm just unwilling to give it up. I can't. I have a Mac shop. I own a creative agency. There's all these reasons I would be laughed around with friends if I didn't have an iPhone. And it's like, you think, how am I that fragile? I'm a very successful multi-million-dollar CEO. I can't do it. Like, my identity is too wrapped in this thing. Right. Yeah. And so I think cultural anthropology brings the science to it to understand people do not make rational decisions, and they also don't make decisions in a linear fashion. They zigzag all over the place. So if your marketing is predicated on some straight arrow system, and this is going to happen, and this, and then this, and then this, good luck. That is just not going to work. And you're going to be very frustrated not understanding that. And the second thing I think that where it helps is that kind of like that it's not apples to apples. And I'll explain it this way. I had a country club come to me, and they were like, hey, Priscilla, we want you to, make our country club branded and the marketing. And it's like, we want them to choose us over all the other country clubs. I'm like, okay, well, that's not your competition. And they're like, okay, well, you could include some of the other, golf club, like some of the municipal. And I'm like, no, that's not your competition. And they're like, well, it just went on and on. And I'm like, no, this is not who you're branding against. You're branding against, I'm either going to spend this amount of money on a membership at a country club, or I'm going to take my kids on another bigger a European vacation this year. I'm going to get this country club membership, or I'm going to lease a new vehicle.
Okay, yeah, that's how Nike used to compare, their competition. They didn't think about Adidas or other shoe brands. They thought about Netflix and the person who's spending time watching entertainment instead of being out on a run or doing something.
100%. And so this is where truly understanding the human helps you market, as opposed to just coming out like, well, obviously I'm just going to be better than the other product. Better product almost never wins out. Just FYI.
I love that. That's such a great thing to keep in mind. All right. In 2011, Joplin was hit by an F5 tornado. Weeks later, your studio burned down. How did surviving those events change your mindset as an agency leader?
You're going to make me real sad, Dylan.
Well, I think it's those things that shape us, right? It all kind of adds up.
Yeah, for sure. Number one, I just don't suffer fools too much anymore. So I,
you don't I got one small things when you've made it through a life-sparing event like that.
Yeah, for sure. But watching my creative studio burn to the ground, and that's not a metaphor. I mean, watching it burn to the ground is really made me think, what do I want to build? Like, what am I trying to say? What am I trying to do? What am I trying to do for my clients? Like, why should I rebuild? Am I important to them? And I want people to reflect on their own journey, owning a company, and say, oh my gosh, remember when we hired Priscilla's firm? Oh my gosh, what a game changer. I want that experience from it. And so it really helped me hone in and say, look, I don't want to say yes to everything. And that's when I renamed my company to Little Bird Marketing. It was something else before that. And it was about, look, when you have really great news, you start by saying, a little birdie told me. And that's really positive and that's great. But the other thing that a lot of people miss is that if a little birdie told you this fact, it means you're in the know.
Yeah, it's inside.
Group, right? It's an insider trading information. And it means you have a special relationship with other people, that you were trusted with this, and then you had people to speak to. And it's about influence, really. And so to me, that's where that name comes from. I want to work with companies who want to have that special relationship with their clients. Like, they're not trying to just churn people through. And so, for me, how that changed things, I also came back and built a lot more systems, because too many things. I tell a story about like a stack of papers that were on my desk that were never going to get to, but they ate at me all the time. Like, oh, I got to get that done. I got to get that done. I don't do that anymore to myself. I don't pretend I'm going to do something anymore that I'm never going to do. And it was a really hard, very sad morning when I was sat at my desk like 6 months later, after we had a new office and we were sitting there, and I realized nobody called me about anything that was in that pile. There was nothing missing. Nobody even remembered what was in that pile. But I lived under the stress of that pile. And it eked at me every day. And so I didn't need to do anything in that pile. So if you have things on your desk right now that just are sitting, but the reality is you probably don't even need to do it. Throw it in the trash.
That's so good.
Focus on the thing you want to do. And the last thing I learned about that was, and it's going to make me cry talking about it, but was be really mindful of your sidewalk people. As my place was burning to the ground, there were people who showed up, and they stood there, like physically showed up for me. And never take those people for granted. They're for you. They support you. And even when you just don't even think people are watching. And I'm telling you, I have built the rest of my career, and I'll use the podcast for this good, to say, I have sidewalk people. I have people who will walk through this entire journey with me. How can I show up for other people like this? When things are bad, don't forget those other people. really come alongside. Let's say they worked at Apple and they were your in at Apple, and then they leave Apple. They lose their job at Apple. You better give them a call. You're their sidewalk people. And so you need to be mindful about the people who have showed up for you in your journey, and be sure to show up for them.
Yeah, that's great. People can be transactional, right? They see, oh, so-and-so's moved off to another job, or maybe they don't have a job, or maybe they're, no longer in a place to give you business. But then, you write that person off, how are you going to be helpful they're probably not going to help you in the future if you don't spend time investing and putting investments into that relationship while they can't do something for you.
Right.
I think that's a great reminder. All right. You've made massive waves in market research and consumer insights. Why is that sector so notoriously hard to market? And how did Little Bird carve out that dominant niche?
That's interesting. I actually wish I could say it was all my idea, but it wasn't. I was asked by an organization called Green Book to come speak about marketing to their market researchers. It was a thing called Insights Marketing Day. And they called me out of the blue. I didn't know who they were. And I came to New York and I spoke, and I was asked to come back the next time and the next time. And they were like, you're a very highly rated speaker. But I realized in the room, there were all these people. I went to school to do what they were doing. And so I understood them. But I realized their marketing was so bad. I mean, it was just, it was so bad. And it was so interesting to me because it was a case of the cobbler's kids who had no shoes. Their entire life's work, gave data to make marketing better for other companies, but not for themselves. And all I did was like, well, let's just turn this around. Let's do it for you. What? So I started speaking at those, and I kept getting asked back. And then eventually that company, who I work with still continually at a lot of conferences, they actually didn't want to, they didn't have the bandwidth anymore to continue to do that Insights Marketing Day. And they spun it off to me. And they're like, we'll support you, Priscilla.
Wow.
Our industry wants that day. They need this marketing day, but we just don't have the bandwidth anymore. Do you want that day? And I'm like, sure. I took it over. We actually have that coming up in September in Chicago, and it's insightsmarketingday.com. Anybody in marketing, with anything from sales and marketing, AI. We have one of the leading AEO, GEO guys speaking. I'm going to be talking about frameworks. We have two gals who are just at the very top of their game with AI and how to pivot your business right now in AI. And then we have Mark Hans from Tango, the company I gave a shout out to. He is just such a dynamic, fun person. And he's going to bring it all home. It's like, how do we make this stick? How do we actually do something with this at the end of a one-day conference? But it's amazing networking and gelato carts. And, it's kind of an unconference conference, if you know what I mean.
I love that. Yeah, those are the best ones these days. Those are the ones that are standing out, right? The ones that feel like a summer camp, not a business conference, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And it brings that barrier down. You don't have to feel stupid. Like, we're all learning. It's all changing underneath our feet every day. And you can just ask any question and get help. And that's, I think that kind of environment is what people need more than anything.
Well, I definitely think people should show up to that. I will bookmark it in my calendar as well. All right. You run a course on building strategic influence on LinkedIn. What's the biggest mistake executives make when trying to build thought leadership, especially on that platform?
Well, I think it kind of goes back to what I think is wrong in sales and marketing. It's consistency. People give up way too soon. And the other thing is, here's a really kind of in the weeds thing, but it's something that I think changes people's mindset. And that is, they say, oh, my buyer's not out on LinkedIn. And I can prove to people over and over again, your buyer may not post on LinkedIn, but they are for yours on LinkedIn. And if you really pay attention and grow your audience over time, you will finally spot them. There will be ways that they show up, ways that they raise their hand. And if you are not attuned to it, you will miss it. And so that's kind of the first thing. The mistake is they don't get started because they think the person that they're looking for, oh, they're not out there. Well, they are. And then the other big mistake, and this is why I teach it the way I teach it, is that you have to change your mindset. And the biggest mindset shift is LinkedIn doesn't care about you. I don't know what you think they are, And the people will tell me all the things that they are. They're a resume site, they're, a networking, they're free social. I don't care what they are. No, they are an advertising for-profit company. They want you to do certain things so they can sell more ads. That's long and short of it. So once you really understand that, then you can come at it with a different mindset, which I have, which is that it's just a 24/7 cocktail party. And if you come with that mindset and you actually act how you would at a cocktail party, which all of us humans know how to do, right? We don't stand at the front door and say, I'm here, come over here, talk to me. You wouldn't do that at a cocktail party, but people do it on LinkedIn all the time. As opposed to right? Walking across the proverbial room, coming to Dylan's profile, seeing what he said, listening, and then interjecting and maybe telling a joke. Like it's like bringing the humanity back to it. If you start doing the human things to it, then you will not only start having more fun, which will make you want to stay and do it, but you will start building real relationships, and they will be more meaningful. And then you won't be saying to me these things like, my buyer's not out here and this is stupid, right? So there's a lot to it. Obviously, I teach it over 12 weeks. It's not cheap, but it's not tips and tricks. It's change your habits, change your mindset. And I mean, honestly, at this point, as a channel that's unowned, but is like coming at me, I mean, I make a lot of money on LinkedIn. So
I love that.
I made one post about, being a fractional CMO. And I literally got an email, DM back, and it's like, Priscilla, I've watched you for a long time. Just give me a call tomorrow. I need this fractional CMO service. I've been working for his account for the last 6 months. That's crazy. That's not a $20 product. We're in the tens of thousands of dollars. And so, to me, people make a lot of mistakes on LinkedIn. But first and foremost, it's thinking that LinkedIn is for them. And so like it's going to help you somehow.
Yeah. Well, the other thing people need to know is LinkedIn has just released an AI slop button. So if you're slopping too hard, people are going to hit that button and report you for over slopping. So make sure that you bring original thoughts.
Original thoughts. But let me just tell you, bad writers are horrible at spotting AI or good writing. They can't spot good writing. So how can they spot bad writing? So now this is just going to be, in my opinion, a total shit show of people reporting people who it's probably original thought. And case in point, I mean, I look at my book that I wrote before AI. I love the M dash. Now I can't even use it. It's so stupid,
I know. That is so silly, huh?
Yeah, so I get it that people were doing, are using it horribly, but guess what? Nothing's changed. People have been doing horrible, stupid stuff on LinkedIn for a long time, and I've learned to ignore it. And also, people ask me all the time, why do I have a period before my name on LinkedIn? I've been catching bots since the beginning of time, okay? So when I get a message and it says, dearest.Priscilla, blah, 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 I'm like, delete. You can get around AI crap all the time. And here's one tip. If you I would say, instead of ever pressing that AI slot button, instead, if you would just train your feed to follow people who are really of interest to you. For example, if you like what I post, go to my profile, go up to actually on my profile page, go to the top of it and double ring my bell. Meaning
hit the notification button.
Yes. And so you add a notification level. And what that's going to do is it's going to say, oh, give me everything Priscilla writes. So then the next time you see something stupid from someone, you go to the 3 dots next to their post and you say, show me less of this. And you train your feed, and your feed will be wonderful. And now you won't have to be LinkedIn's minion reporting to them and snitching on everybody about who's using AI. Right? So don't be an AI snitch. Just improve your feed and you won't have any problems.
I love it. All right. You advocate for loosening control responsibility so team members can make independent calls. How do you set clear scopes of work without micromanaging creative talent?
Well, be prepared to lose people is what I'm saying if you want to do this. Because this system does not work with everybody. I would say the best way to have loosen control and have more creativity, and I know this from running a creative agency, is put some pretty tight controls down. Put standard operating procedures, have templated checklists, have people understand have people write a project brief every time they start a project management card. Not just, I created a card, so we can manage it. No. Download everything. Tell me what we're supposed to do. And then people will do it in their own way. And then you have to be okay with, like, someone explains to me, well, I did it this way. And I'm like, well, tell me why. Help me understand. Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't have done it that way, but that works. And they would say to me, it's like, well, how would you have done it? I'm like, well, I would have done it this one. And I'm like, but now that I think of it, I kind of like how you put that together. You have to be able to have a team that really can talk like that, and not everybody can. And so a lot of people talk about, oh, you have to do this across the board. No, you can do this with your executives, and then not with more junior people. You can do it differently all over the place. My freelancers don't get just carte blanche. They get very specific directives. But my podcast producer, I'm like, Seth, what do you think we should do? Should we do it this way? Should we do that? I'm like, I don't know. Make the checklist and then run it by me. So I think you have to be okay with there's not one system out there. But I think if you can, in every place where you do anything a second time, the second time you do it, you should be creating a standard operating procedure.
Yeah.
So if it's a one-off, truly a one-off, just get it done, write it up and do it yourself. The second time you do something, it has to be written down. And then we also have something at Little Bird Marketing called the Rule of 3. You can't do anything on your own until you've done it 3 times with having no problems, like supervise, like with everything. I don't care what it is. But once you have done it 3 times and someone's like, that's awesome, you don't even have to ask somebody.
Smart. I love it. Well, this has been such a fascinating episode, Priscilla. You've got a wealth of knowledge around so many different topics and communicate in such a easy to understand, fun way that I would be surprised if people don't get a ton of value out of this episode. If folks want to follow along with your thought leadership, maybe check out your shows or get in touch with you at the agency, where do you want to send people to stay in touch?
Yeah, I answer everything of my own on LinkedIn. So I don't have an assistant handle that. So if you want to reach out to me there. And I would say, just don't predicate it with a bunch of junk. Just tell me what you really need. If I can do it, I'll do it. If I can't, I'll tell you I can't. So I'd be happy to see you there. Of course, there's tons of free resources on my website at littlebirdmarketing.com/resources. Ponderings from the Perch is my personal podcast, and then Digital Transformation Success. But I would really love it if anybody's listening and you read my book, Collaboration is the New Competition, which it's super cheap online. I'm not trying to make money on my book, but I think it's very helpful. And I write very matter-of-factly. And if you have read it, I would really appreciate a review on Amazon.
I love it. Well, we will go ahead and do that. And anybody out there who hasn't bought the book, let's put that in your end of summer, dog days of summer business must reads. All right. Well, Priscilla, thanks so much for coming on the show. Again, we really appreciate your time. And for those of you at home, if you are watching the show for the first time, don't forget to give us a follow or a subscribe. I will skip the podcast review ask, since that was already done by our wonderful guest on the front end of the show. But last but not least, if there is a marketer out there, maybe somebody from the marketing research world, or just somebody who would enjoy the great show that I had with Priscilla today, don't forget to share the show. And with that, I will see you all again shortly. Thanks for coming on.